All right, are you ready for the case study on the Blue Springs house, the flip that wouldn't flip? Okay, well, here's the deal. We bought this house in Blue Springs. You did everything right. Used the 70% rule, the maximum allowable offer formula. It said we could pay 100,000 for it. We bought it for less than that. We rehabbed it. We put it on the market, and nobody would look at it. Not a soul. We lowered the price. We lowered the price. Got a few looky-loos, but nobody was making an offer. We didn't know what was wrong. We'd sold similar houses nearby. Not a problem. This one just was not going. And we were like, okay, we've got to either write a check to sell this house, because if we lowered the price anymore, there was no more profit, or we got to find something else that we can do to get this house sold. If we looked at the numbers, all in with purchase, rehab, holding costs, we were at about $138,000 in this house. We thought it was worth $179,000. We were down to $165,000. So we knew that if we would offer seller financing, that was an easy one. Offer seller financing, we get more buyers because everybody loves seller financing. It blows up. You get all these realtors calling you. But we also knew a few things. We were at the time in a training class, a mentoring program with Note School. If you don't know Note School, it's been around for a while, and it teaches everything you would ever need to know about notes, whether it's creating a note, working defaults in notes, how to wholesale a note. That's a good one. You need to learn how to do that. But what we had learned to create a seller finance note was, one, we didn't know how to do all the paperwork, and we needed to make sure we did it right, because this was like right after the Great Recession, and Dodd-Frank had just came out, and oh my goodness, they were looking at mortgage loans. So we hired a residential mortgage loan officer that would do all the paperwork and make sure we had everything done legally, correctly, and all the disclosures and forms. We had paperwork like crazy. We hired them to do it for us. Then we hired a servicer because they would collect the money. They would collect the escrow, like the taxes and insurance, and make sure that got paid. And they would also send everything off to, tax forms and stuff that the borrower needed. And then the next thing we learned from Note School was how to actually get the person we wanted to sell our finance. We wanted to market on our marketing of the house that we were looking for a good qualified buyer. What does that mean? Well, they needed to have substantial down. What does that mean? A lot of money. And they needed to have a good story. So we needed to know why they wanted us to sell or finance them over just going to the bank, because we didn't want to just sell or finance anybody. We wanted to sell or finance somebody that was going to pay us. So we used that. So let's talk about our buyer and his good story. He called us up and he led with it. He had $20,000 to put down, money to work with, and he was interested in getting seller financing because his wife had recently passed away. She'd been sick for a long time. I think it was cancer. And during that time, she wasn't working, he wasn't working, and nobody was paying the bills on anything. Lots of bills. And when we pulled his credit report, we looked at that. Yep, great payment history before she got sick. Then there was about a year period there where nothing was getting paid. And then you could see where after she had passed, the life insurance hit and a lot of the bills were all paid off. A lot of them weren't. They were still in default. And then he had some new bills. He had bought a car on credit and he was making good payments on that. He had a new credit card. He was making those payments. It was all great. It was all good. And then we looked at his bank statements, and his bank statements were great too. He had a lot of money coming in as a roofing contractor and not much going out. So he made enough money to afford the house. And then he had another part of his problem in a story. When they had reported his wife had passed away to the credit bureaus, somehow it got translated that he had passed away as well. So he had a big problem to solve with proving he wasn't deceased. So here is the deal that we worked with him. We were listed at $165,000 and we made that the sale price. Out of his $20,000 down, he put $16,500 as down payment. The rest went for closing costs, paying that mortgage loan officer, all the other fees that go with recording and getting a mortgage. He made a loan. We signed a promissory note and a deed of trust because it was in Missouri for $148,500. It was a 20-year amortization, so 240 months at 8% interest. That made his principal and interest payment to us through the servicer of $1,242.10. $1,242.10. So those are the numbers. that we were working with, and we were looking at holding it for 20 years. We wanted to make some money. Initially, when we were flipping the house, we weren't going to make anything. But what, in theory, could we have made if we would have held this note? This is what we were looking at. We've got that $16,500 in down payment. We were looking that we're going to get $1,240 a month for 240 months. If you add that all up, it's about $300,000. And if you remember, we initially had $138,000 into it. So we went from the house that we couldn't sell to making $16,500 right now, and then over 20 years making $176,000. Not bad for a house we couldn't sell. Now, we were flippers, and you need to watch the next video because we sold that note and got not $176,000, but we got our money back so we could go do another deal. So watch the next video to find out how the next part of this goes, and be sure to join us at MAREI on the 13th and at the class on the 17th so you can learn how to do this too.